wrecked by the best fuck silence!
The Disciples audio animation by Stereo Stages.
Most people believe that dreams are nothing more than the places the mind visits while the body rests. Infinite expression of the uncensored thought, limited only by one's own imagination. But what if I told you that dreaming has the real potential to involve more than just a person's mind? What if I told you that dreams aren't just restricted to the imagination? What if I told you that I can prove that not all dreams are harmless? One December night, I woke up in a heart-thumping, sweat-soaked panic after having an incredibly vivid nightmare. I was being pursued by a hellish-looking abomination, and the second it caught me, I woke up in my dark bedroom with a dull pain aching in my left arm, right where the creature had latched onto me. The pain felt so real, I could still feel it lingering as I rubbed my arm. I took a few moments to catch my breath and tried to calm down. As I walked myself through the improbability of the scenario, I told myself that I was being an idiot. I must have just banged my arm in my sleep. It was certainly the most plausible theory, until I realized there was something tightly clenched in my right hand. Through the sudden fear, I hadn't even noticed it. I quickly stretched my arm out through the silent darkness and fumbled my other hand around to find the bedside lamp. A pain shot through my left arm when I switched it on. In its revealing light, I first noticed deep, fresh bruises on my arm, right where the pain was, but my attention was drawn overwhelmingly back to my right hand. I was firmly holding a heavy, black stone of some kind. Gut-wrenching panic returned to the forefront of my consciousness. I woke up battered and clutching an object entirely alien to me. What the hell would you think? The stone's true shape eluded me, as it was so black and devoid of color that it seemed to consume and transcend the dim light that spread across my room. The stone was almost the opposite of light. It hummed with an electric energy while I clutched it in my grip. I put the stone to my ear, no change in volume. Moved the stone away, still no shift in sound. The humming appeared to be coming from my own head. But I felt like I knew it was coming from the stone, as if it was speaking to me. Reality caught up with my curiosity, and I dropped the mysterious object. It fell softly down to nest in the blankets surrounding me, and the humming subsided. I could hardly wrap my head around what happened. Had I been sleepwalking? Or had someone been in my house while I was asleep? Why would someone break in and put a stone in my hand? Who would want to do that? Were they still in my house? My mind and pulse raced, but after searching the house and turning up empty-handed, apart from the dark stone, I simply chalked it up to a fuck if I know moment and tried not to think hard about it. I had a busy life. Who doesn't? Work, relationships, enough hours of sleep. They don't wait for shit like this, and they don't stop for your mental breakdowns. Friends, family, love interests, they don't look kindly on the guy raving about dream monsters and sleep stones. It's hard enough to meet the right woman without having to explain your night terrors that you're convinced have crossed into the physical world by proof of bruises and magic dream rocks. So I rationalized that I must have just forgotten I had the stone and found it while I was sleepwalking. Tossing the humming stone in my bedside drawer, I shut it from my thoughts and went back to sleep, back to normal life. About a week later, things started getting more fucked up. I kept seeing the same creature in my dreams at night. It spoke into my thoughts with a deep electronic voice. Its body looked like something out of a science fiction horror movie. The entity was tall, maybe 8 feet in height. Its head was devoid of any discernible human features. From the chin up, its mass was unconnected, a bunch of floating, swirling pieces that changed in shape and location to fit the subtext of its mood. When it spoke into my thoughts, the disembodied facial flesh pulsed and churned with dark energy in perfect sync with each syllable. I could feel each and every word. It had no clothes, and its skin was hard and leathery, but amorphous and fluctuating, changing slightly or drastically at the creature's will. I can never remember what that thing tells me, only the haunting sound of its metallic voice echoing through my head. I woke up every night that week for 7 days straight, with new bruises on my body and a new stone in my hand. I started to find a guilty comfort in the soft dull hum of the stones buzzing in my head. Sometimes it was the only thing soothing enough to get me back to sleep. For some reason, I couldn't bring myself to get rid of the odd stones. But things started getting more out of control. A few times I caught myself having conversations with them when I hadn't remembered even grabbing one. They would just end up in my hands, and hours would go by before I snapped out of this trance. After that, everything really began to escalate. One night, after I drifted off to sleep, I suddenly awoke finding myself standing in the middle of a long, dark, empty road, wearing nothing but a t-shirt and my underwear. No shoes and nothing on my person. Later, I discovered that in a 2-hour window, I had somehow ended up 27 miles away from my house, with bare feet and no memory of how I got there. A passing motorist discovered me, confused and cold. They called 911 and let me wait in their car. At the time, I didn't know where I was, so when the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics insisted I get checked out. CT scans, x-rays, more x-rays, and then waiting. When I saw more doctors and staff gathering, eyes casting glances in my direction, I realized something was wrong. An intimidating man in a white lab coat gestured for me to follow him into a private office. With a troubling, puzzled look, the man stared at me, trying to find words. He settled on just flipping the switch to backlight the x-rays hanging on the wall. Unsure of what I was looking at, my gaze faltered between the doctor and the images.
"I've never seen anything like this before,"
he finally said.
"There are 6... I don't really know what they are, but there's 6 of something in your chest and stomach."
I knew what they were. Those fucking black stones. Violently, that humming began to overtake my hearing. It vibrated my skull, threatening to rip it apart. Screaming, I pressed my palms into my ears, but the sound was resonating from within. My vision started to flash, something dark and ominous, then back to the blinding fluorescent lighting of the hospital. Faster the flashing went, louder the humming, tearing through me like a jackhammer. That was the last thing I remember before I woke up here. Bleak and ever-changing, the landscape is like a destroyed desert planet. Masses of land floating in empty, dismal space, constantly shifting, dead but completely alive. The ground seems to be evaporating in front of me, pieces floating up into the red-gray sky. Like reverse rain, it drifts into the black clouds that occasionally erupt with a contained frenzy of green lightning. Muted, the thunder seems to resonate within the stones inside my body. I can feel them now, much more strongly. The stones feel more real than my actual self. They pulse with my heartbeat, almost instead of my heartbeat. I can feel them pulling me. They guide my way, commanding my desires. Further I progress through the somber wasteland, and the worse it gets. Strange skeletal trees protrude from the ground, extending upwards in unnatural, harsh angles. A red, blood-like ichor oozes from their pores, festering with rot and pestilence. When I fight the calling of the stones, they tremble with fury inside me, twisting and contorting my insides. I can't fight them. The pain is unbearable. When I give in, they release me from physical suffering, but I know they lead me to damnation. My progress is rewarded with urgency. The stones pull harder with every step I take. Now, I'm not alone. When I passed the first one of them, my horrified shock triggered a strange reaction in the stones. Something akin to sadistic amusement permeated inside my chest. Along the path the stones pulled me was a large, black, hard mass. It impaled a shriveled human body, piercing and intertwining in and out. The mass completely imprisoned the figure. So withered and battered, the sex of the person was unrecognizable, hardly more than tattered skin and bone. Sunken-in eyes stared me down from their unblinking sockets. It wasn't until the black mass started throbbing and the person spoke into my mind that I realized they were still alive. "Release me!" Its horrid, raspy voice echoed through the private recesses of my thoughts. So jarring and intrusive, I physically jumped. The tortured soul's gaze penetrated my torso, and what looked to be a moment of pity befell those dry, fixed eyes. "Chrysalis," it moaned out. "The same." Those hollow words cut through me like arctic winds. Did it mean I'll suffer the same fate? Chrysalis. For some reason, that word resonates in my mind. There's something more to the stones. Like a cocoon, I feel them changing inside me, tethering me to this world. As I advanced through the terrible dreamscape, the imprisoned human bodies became ever increasing in number, their states growing more horrific the further I got. All the while, their incessant howling echoing in my head. How many voices can the mind take before it fills and bursts? The sheer chaos of it was just too much. I clawed at my scalp, pounded my fists against my ears, but my efforts were in vain. The voices would not cease, their pain and fury taken out on the only living thing they could affect. Me. Inside me, the stones began to burn. I could feel all 6 of them radiating heat, all but incinerating the inside of my torso. And all at once, everything stopped. No voices, no burning, no bodies. From the position in which I laid, the world seemed to move around me so that I was standing up and then move forward. It was as if my body was traveling at an unfathomable speed, but I wasn't moving at all. Something, or some force, was moving me with complete control. Something powerful. In a way that defies everything I know about worldly physics, my body violently and abruptly stopped, bringing me face to face with the entity that had been haunting my dreams. Here now, in consciousness, I knew him. Azrock the Tormentor. I've always known him. He's haunted my dreams all the way from adolescence until now. Countless memories flood to the front of my thoughts, the forgotten persecutions of a lifetime. In every bloody and terrifying scene, Azrock is there. Floating pieces revolving cosmically around the dark energy making up his abhorrent, shifting face.
Welcome back.
That metallic, incongruous voice is familiar to me now as that of a family member. Its vibrations awakened something within the stones. They were connected to the presence of this abomination. He put them inside of me. He brought me here.
You will stay with us.
Azrock's arms spread out in a presentorial manner, reaching far into the ether, bringing forth those whose tormented bodies I had passed. In his presence, they were silent in my head. Extending an arm impossibly long, he guided one of the floating sufferers to him, breathing in the poor mortal's pain and anguish. The dark nucleus glowed with the red energy of ecstasy. Bringing a sharp claw to the human's chest, he slowly pushed it in and began to drag it down the center of the torso. Like myself, unable to move or speak out, the only visible reaction were tears of blood flowing from their eyes. Having cut a deep, precise line all the way to the person's groin, his hands dig inside and start pulling out shriveled organs that are black with corruption. Pulling out a lung, it begins to vibrate in Azraq's influence. Beating at the speed of a hummingbird's wings, the blackened flesh burned away, revealing a floating handful of the black stones. He worked at the rest of the organs, all the while the stones joined into his body. These people trapped here like me, he's harvesting them. I get it now. He sends the stones back to the physical world with the dreamers. We become infected by them. Then he can affect us physically, put the stones inside of us, keep us here, harvest us. Upon this realization, Azraq's head turned 180 degrees around to face me, as if hearing my thoughts or just remembering I was here. His body then turned as well. Under his gaze, the blood in my veins felt as ice, my limbs uncooperative. He brought me forth, moving the entire world around him, a minor display of the complete power he wields in this place. Bringing up that wicked claw, he pressed it gently into my forehead. The rush of images, knowledge, screaming, and chaos that flooded in was unendurable. Our brains are not meant for such a transference. Seizing wildly, I scarcely felt the release over the hold on my body.
Let them grow.
His final command rang out in my head through the disarray. Through tunnel vision, I could see his form and the world above falling away. Instinctive defiance kicked in, and I latched onto that claw that had pierced my head in an attempt to stop myself from falling. Without the slightest bit of resistance, it detached from his hand, and I fell back into black nothingness. Here I exist, somewhere between worlds, simply incubating these fucking stones until Azraq comes to collect me. No, I am not his puppet. I will be no slave to this world. His knife-like claw remains in my grasp. I feel them, so alive inside of me I can practically see them through the dark. If the stones bind me to this world, then what if I remove them? He won't be able to hold me here. Easy choice. I go for the lowest first, plunging his claw into my abdomen. The weak flesh gives no resistance. The cold sting of shock gives way to wet, red-hot agony. I scream out in pain, but no one is here to listen. No other option. My other hand buries itself in the warm, slimy mess until I feel something hard. Grasping that stone, I pull. It pulls back. Like a parasite being uprooted, it fights until finally a harsh snap and it comes free. As it does, an immediate encompassing flash of light consumes all for just the briefest of moments. Then I'm back in my darkness, blood-soaked hands and open stomach. All on its own, my hand is back inside and already clasped around another stone. Snap! And the light flashes again, affirming my brutal self-mutilation. Two more stones out before I have to open another hole in myself. Nestled under my ribs, I hesitate only slightly before thrusting the razor-sharp claw in between them. Before my brain can register the pain, I push hard and snap the 2 ribs my cutting tool was lodged between. Total and complete crippling agony, the likes of which I've never known, take hold for longer than I have to give. The only thing I'm thankful for at this time is floating in nothingness. If I had to support my weight in any way, I don't think I could continue. I dig my hand in between my broken ribs, pushing hard to fit my fist through the narrow space. Shooting pain makes my arms weak, but there's no going back now. There! I grasp the stone and pull. As my fist comes out, it further breaks my ribs and splits my skin. But just for a second, I'm somewhere else. I hear someone calling out. Like the flip of a switch, I'm back in my dark and lonely suffering. One more stone. It's all going to be worth it, I tell myself. The sky opens up and Azrock looks in on me, head ablaze with rage. I do not hesitate. I plunge his claw repeatedly into my chest, tearing through skin, organs, and bone indiscriminately. There is no time for pain. This is it. Clawing through the black with animalistic fury and pure hate, he pulls at the thick dark, moving towards me. Limbs growing in number, enraged, he descends upon me. Choking on my own coppery syrup, my hand finds the stone, and I pull with everything I have left. A mass of arms spread out to envelop me. Snap. Blinding light. Its brilliance a greater comfort than any I have known. I squint and blink away at its beautiful harshness. Where am I? I can't move.
Thank you for coming so quickly, Dr. Bennett. I don't know how to explain what's happened to this man. If this isn't in the realm of neurosurgery, then I don't know what is.
Absolutely. Though I couldn't make heads or tails of your message. What happened?
This man was found wandering alone and confused in the middle of the road. When he was brought in, I took x-rays and found 6 dark masses in his chest and abdomen. When I told him what we saw, he collapsed and remained unresponsive for some time. Then suddenly he began to scream and fight. It took several of us to physically restrain him, and the sedatives we administered seemed to have no effect on him. I checked his pupils, but there was no dilation, no physical response to external stimuli. It was like he was in a coma, but somehow still talking and fighting.
And what about these black masses you found?
That's the thing. They're gone. But now there's one inside his brain.
It wasn't there before?
Without a doubt, no.
It looks like he's waking up.
Hello? Where am I? Somebody? Hello? Get me out. Get me out of here! Get me out of here! No! Azrock! Azrock's coming! No! No!
I've seen this before. Prep him for surgery. Immediately.
Well, what do you think, mortals? The disciple here, as always. I hope you enjoyed this new story. And I hope you get some good sleep. Azrock is a real good friend of mine. And, I'll send him your way. I'll send him your way tonight. tonight. Unless you like this video, you make sure you are subscribed, okay? And then maybe, leave a comment down there where, we can talk shit to each other. You can say, hey man, where have you been for the last, this whole year? And I'll be like, look man, I'm busy, okay? I gotta work and shit, full time. Instead of, spending all day making free, awesome stuff for you, which I probably would rather do, to be honest, but, you gotta make money to live, okay? Okay? Okay. But anyways, no, for real. Subscribe, comment, or ASRock is gonna come your way, and I'm gonna tell him right where you are. Right where you're sleeping, Cause that's just, why wouldn't you? You watched this whole thing, you made it to here, and you didn't like it? Come on, man, come on. I gotta go, I gotta go.